I would like to talk about the negative influences on this planet Earth and how to best deal with these negative influences. Negative influences can be ancestral patterns of sabotage, of neglect, of abandonment, of low self-worth. Negative influences can be agendas, widespread agendas of oppression, self-hate, self-neglect, you name it. There are all kinds of negative influences. Those are just a couple. Could be here all day talking about that. So planet Earth is a quite interesting planet. And the way that planet Earth is called the warrior planet. We are drawn to Mars for a reason, okay? We're drawn to Mars because Mars represents the warrior. It's Aries, okay? Aries is the first comer to planet Earth, okay? The first in the zodiac, the 12 zodiac. Aries represents the forefront. Okay, so they have the enthusiasm, the charisma, and the bravery to step up. So when we think of Mars in our astrological chart, we think of having to stand your ground. Okay, so Mars also has to do with anger. So a part of our destruction, okay, is anger. Okay, when we don't know how to balance anger, that anger can be the fuel for great destruction. Okay, or that anger can be used for great revolution, great liberation. It just depends on what kind of side you are on. So this planet is a polarity planet. And a part of planet Earth is that we are dealing with massive amount of light and massive amount of darkness. It's dense on planet Earth. We know this. It's a very dense planet. And a part of what elevates the density on planet Earth is during those periods of time on this Earth when humankind is very elevated. When humankind is elevated, we actually have the energetic capacity to elevate the density of this planet. We are a special species. We have one of the strongest electromagnetic fields. Okay, we're one of numerous species on this planet Earth, and yet we are the one species that has the strongest electromagnetic field. So what that means is the strongest electromagnetic field has the strongest gravitational magnetic pull on this planet. Okay, so when we talk about manifestation, humankind is manifestation. And a part of manifestation is magnetism. You have to have a very powerful magnetic pull on the environment to what we call align your vision into reality. Okay, so there are periods on this planet, and call it the fifth dimension, before the patriarchal age, around 12,000 years ago. We were in a matriarchal age, and we also can see it as the golden age, the higher incarnation of humankind. And during that, the planet was not as dense as it is now. It was not as dense. We call the negative influences were not as heavy on the psyche as they are today. Okay, so maneuvering out these negative influences were, we could say, a lot easier during this time. Okay, during the matriarchal time, about 12,000 years ago. We know it as like the Minoan period, which is very mysterious. Nobody knows about the Minonians. Okay, we know it as the early pre-dynastic Egypt. So we talk about before the pre-dynastic Egypt. Okay, we can see it as like the Chemite culture and Egypt. And elevation, liberation has always been our path of breakthrough. So these negative influences we call the shadow side. Okay, the shadow side, it's polarity, okay? And this shadow side is, we like to see it as external, like there's external entities or external sort of influences, and external sort of agendas of ETs or higher ups or you name it. Okay, there's so many kinds of agendas going on. We call it galactic, we call it government. I mean, it goes on. Okay, so a lot of this shadow, we all carry these shadows within us. It's kind of when we take on the human genetic code. Basically, we're taking on the earth grid and the psyche that the earth grid holds at this time. And the psyche of this earth grid at this time holds a lot of unresolved shadows. A lot of unresolved shadows. And this has to do basically with the whole patriarchal age. So a lot of the oppression is still lingering in the psyche. Genocide, trauma in many forms, psychological, mental, physical, emotional, you name it. We're carrying those shadows inside of us and a part of wherever you're born. Okay, your geographic region, it basically represents the level of liberation and breakthrough you want to have in this incarnation. So there are very dense pockets on this planet. Usually we call those like third world countries. We're very dense. Okay, but a lot of those places that we perceive as like very dense at this time were actually very elevated at other times. Okay, we're actually more elevated than the you could say the countries that have, let's say, more economic balance or social balance, cultural balance. Okay, so when we think of like the Middle East, we think of like South America, a lot of places in South America, think of a lot of places in Africa, a lot of places in India. When we go back into the ancient past, those were the places that had the most psychic energy surging through. Okay, so we think of, South America, and there was a lot of places that had a lot of psychic energy moving through these these places. India, the Middle East, we think of Africa, there was a lot of psychic energy moving through. So psychic energy is quite interesting in that it can play both sides. Psychic energy can play for, amplifying the shadow, or also it can amplify the light. It just all depends on where that psychic energy is being it's targeting. So if we're targeting the shadow of the patriarch, because we know the Middle East and Africa were very much a part of the establishing the patriarchy leadership for the whole world. It was kind of the epicenter for this whole patriarchal society that we've had for about, you could say, roughly 12,000 years, when it began to really start to integrate into many generations. So we could say the shadow, we have a lot of shadow in Africa, we have a lot of shadow in the Middle East and other places around the world where it has spread and has really gotten hardcore. When I mean hardcore, really anchored in the consciousness of that geographic region. Those are the places that are going through what we call the most sort of crises, because all of that is that shadow. It has to be resolved in order for us to move to the next level. So we can see these shadows, okay, where basically it has to do with when I say it's internal, it is showing us in what way we are oppressing our own power. Okay, so that's what the shadow is. You've split power from yourself. You've given it to someone, something, and that shadow forms around that power that's leaking out of you. So when you take back your power, that power that's leaking out of you, it doesn't exist. So we talk about giving the power to this or to that or the other thing. Basically, you're amplifying this disconnect you have with yourself. And the more disconnect we have with ourselves, the further we start to feel disjointed, or we start to feel our power somehow separate from us, withheld, discriminated, judged. Okay, it's basically outside of ourselves, somewhere we can't access. that's when we start, that shadow becomes that power that was originally inside of us, but since we've created that disconnect, now that power's outside of us and it's formed a shadow. Okay, that's kind of like around us. We call it the shadow that's around us. And simply that just showcases how we have allowed our power to leak, to leak out of us. We've allowed our natural sovereignty, our natural leadership, our natural liberation to be something that is leaked. It's gotten out of us. It's gotten exposed. It's gotten weakened. It's gotten is spoiled or taken from. Okay, and these negative influences throughout time, it's always been about. I mean, if you want to go on all the agendas and conspiracies, the number one thing that all of these things have in common is trying to seduce people to oppress their own power. That's what, when we talk about the negative influence in the childhood or whatever shadow in whatever way, is seducing people to oppress their own power. Because we cannot, free will, the law of free will on this planet Earth is we cannot interfere, okay? People know that, especially there are higher dimensional beings who govern this, okay? We cannot take somebody's power from them, okay? But we can seduce them to oppress their own power, okay? So in the free will law of this planet, if we are to take someone's power from them, basically what we're doing is we are taking away our own power. So the kind of trickery we see with this negative influences, I'm not going to take your power, but I'm just going to seduce you through many, many generations of programming and wiring, is seduce you and your next generation, your next generation, your next generation to oppress their own power. So they think that, eventually all those generations are going to view the shadow as something external that's oppressing them. That the big shadow, the big agenda, the big whatever figure has complete control over them. So that's what happens when we disconnect or leak out some of our own inner power. That leakage, okay, that power that we've extended out of ourselves into something, given a lot of energy to whatever that thing is, it amplifies if there's a shadow that forms around of it, and then since our power is somehow fragmented and it's formed a huge energy with whatever that control is over us, that we are feeling trapped to that. We're feeling bound to that. We're feeling ruled by that. So it's kind of the more we've amplified the shadow, the more liberation we require. So there has been many generations who have been seduced to oppress themselves. And even in this lifetime, constantly we're being seduced to oppress ourselves by so many ways. So many doors are open for humanity to oppress their power. Okay, and to disconnect themselves from their power and to form this shadow that's controlling them. But really it was just simply an inner enemy that came from not taking ownership of your sovereignty and of your self-responsibility. And that's what happens when we don't take ownership, when we don't take self-responsibility for our power. And if our power is leaking, if our power is forming a shadow, what happens is those things begin to, we call, get out of control or begin to control us. So the more self-responsible, the more sovereign we are, the more we tend to have what we call liberated power, where we have full access to our power. Our power is not attached, it's not bound, it's not interlocked, it's not weighted, liberated. Okay, full access to liberated energy, meaning that we have divine will. So we talk about planet Earth as divine will. In so many spiritual scripts, I mean, in so many you could say, spiritual analysis of these ancient times, either India, with Krishna, either in when we think of Buddha, okay, we think of Jesus Christ. There's always been this, I'm using my divine will to liberate the power of humanity, to bring back the power to the people. I mean, that's been a statement that's been replayed throughout time during this patriarchal age, and even in the matriarchal age. This whole giving the power back to the people. Okay. So when we start to have full self-responsibility and full sovereignty over our power, these entities do not become some sort of shadow that's trying to destroy us or kill us, whatever it is. It becomes an opportunity for us to basically gain back more power that we might have leaked, and maybe in past lives we've leaked this power out to these people. So we may have these sort of karmic entanglements with people in this life. Simply they're coming back maybe as enemies because we're wanting to pull back our power from them that we have given to these people, and we play out these karmas in order to get back our power. And how we get back our power from, let's say, these karmic things where people controlled me, or people manipulated me, deceived me, destroyed me, whatever that may be. Okay, I destroyed myself because somebody seduced me to do this, and then I destroyed myself, all this kind of stuff. Is you face them to resolve the shadow that is them. It could even be a person, it could be a place, such as going to Germany, and let's say you have heavy duty German in your lineage, and you have the Holocaust in your lineage. So you feel guided to go to Germany, to go to this geographic hotspot of men's trauma in your ancestral lineage that took a lot of power away from your ancestral DNA, and you go to that places to resolve the shadow and take back the power. Okay, resolve the shadow. And what that looks like and how we resolve these shadows is we face them. We face them not as a destroyer. We face them as an aspect of ourself that wants to be liberated. An aspect of ourself that is trapped, that needs to be liberated. Energy is free. When energy is trapped into these sort of, these shadows of ghosts or the negative vortexes, such as, the Holocaust, all of this is just simply power that was, I like to call, inverted into, or inverted energy, and it's a darker energy. But everything is about balance of the scales, and liberation is about balance of the scales. So we know we have the free will to destroy ourselves. We can allow something our parents said as a child to amplify so much so that we destroy ourselves by it. We also have the power to create ourselves. So, but the divine will is the transcendence of both. The divine will is, we're not just, I like to say, inverted energy, where it's like kind of dark power. Your natural power is transcendence of duality. Transcendence of, we call the negative and the positive, and neutrality is the transcendence, where you zero out everything, where it becomes just space. Space that's neither created nor destroyed. It's just this empty sort of space, like the Holy Spirit. It's just space, okay? It's just pure energy, and that's the Holy Spirit. It's pure energy. It's transcendence of what we call matter, what we call atoms. It's the transcendence of that, before matter and atoms came into being. And matter and atoms, we know, both have negative and positive and neutral energy. Okay, so before we started to basically become magnetic is basically about atoms and matter. They both have magnetic pull. As we know, in the electrons, the protons, there's all some sort of magnetic dance going on. Okay, and the same thing as matter. There's some sort of electromagnetic pull that's going on, even when we think about gravity and how this planet is formed, in the solar system, the sun with the planets, all this gravitational pull, matter, atoms. But before that, Okay, we do, talk about the space. Okay, this emptiness, this total, we call the Holy Spirit. That's the transcendence of atoms and matter. And that's what we call our finest liberation. Okay, and we've experienced that on planet Earth. Okay, and we access, that's our pure power. Okay, and children have that pure power where they're able to, they see ghosts. They go through negative plate vortexes or deal with negative stuff on TV and bombings and all this, whatever we're scared of. They face it head on. And they don't face it with this heavy heart, this heavy gut. They face it with this transcendence view. Like they're very connected to that Holy Spirit. Radiance is basically radiance. And they see the power of divine will. So divine will is that Holy Spirit. When we connect with that Holy Spirit, what are we connecting with? Divine will. Divine will is Jesus Christ to create immense miracles, and for Krishna to have divine wisdom, divine teachings that can help him to win the battle. I mean, you name it. This divine will has been everywhere on this planet as basically a connection to the Holy Spirit. That transcendence of the negativity and the positivity. So where the judgments, don't really exist, and everything becomes an opportunity to liberate. The positivity becomes an opportunity to liberate. The negativity becomes an opportunity to liberate. So when we're dealing with the negative sort of influences, like as a child, we're dealing with it as like a state of liberation. It becomes a state of creativity. When I talk about talent, it becomes an opportunity for spiritual growth, for spiritual alchemy. And that's something like we don't really think about. Like we can actually flip it around. When I say inverted energy, it's basically positive and negative energy are two sides to one coin. So what, like I said, with the Middle East was a very high vibrational place. We can say about 14,000 years ago or so. Okay, very high vibrational, one of the most elevated places on this planet. And yet now it's one of the most, you could say, the densest, because of the patriarchal, like heavy influence in that area, as well as India and well Africa, these sort of geographic regions. And so how we transform energy is through liberation. We can transform energy in any way we want. We can amplify the negative side, and we can amplify the positive side. Either way, negative, positive is one side, is two sides to one coin. So when I say liberation, divine will is that we want to experience the balance. So when I say about Middle East being, we can say a lot of crises going on, and that was not in a different time period, not too far back. It was very, very elevated, a lot of, sort of harmony going on. So part of that psychic energy is wherever you have a lot of psychic energy, if you have a lot of psychic energy, you have a lot of potential to be very destructive or very creative, extremely destructive or extremely creative. So a lot of that psychic energy is what we call, can be projected into shadows. Okay? And those shadows are just simply ways that we've given our power. Okay? And we know when we've given our power because we have lost, or not lost, we have given away our psychic energy, which is basically to manifest, to be an alchemist, to be sovereign, to be self-responsible. We've given that away to something, someone, some agenda. And now our psychic energy is leaked out and has formed this sort of control, where we feel like our psychic energy is being controlled. So a part of the negative influences, again, in the conclusion and the closure of this sort of talk, is that we must connect with that divine will within inside of ourselves. We must connect with that Holy Spirit, that part of ourselves that transcends the negative, positive, where we're simply liberation. We have full responsibility, full sovereignty, okay? And we have full access to what it means to manifest, to what it means to alchemize, to what it means to transform, to what it means to transcend, what it means to reinvent. Because all of, these sort of power dilemmas that we have, that's what a shadow is. You're having a power dilemma. Something is preventing you from reaching another level. Something is causing a block in your psychic energy. And we all have that. We have all these kind of blocks in our psychic energy because we've all been on this planet for a long time, and we've given our power away to so many people in so many ways and so many things. And okay, so we've created all these sort of fragments of ourselves where all these people carry a piece of ourselves, a piece of our power that we've, sort of leaked out, and now that person has control over us in some way. Okay, so a part of, we call getting whole, getting unified with our power, with our sovereign, self-responsible, authentic code, is that we use the Holy Spirit, we use the divine will to become a manifester and an alchemist of our returning and awakening power. So what that looks like is us getting in touch with what it means to be powerful in a sovereign, self-responsible way, not in a power through attachment or through the ego or through any kind of control or manipulation. Power that's through, like children, they have power just through the sovereignty and self-responsibility that they are. They have no control over anything. Children are very much like, they're just free. They're just kind of buoyant, like they don't have ego control, they don't have physical control. I mean, they're just kind of radiant, and extremely, they have so much power, manifestation, alchemy, because they have a deep self-responsibility and sovereignty to their soul. So when we connect with the Holy Spirit, when we connect with that divine will, we're connecting with our soul. We're connecting beyond the atoms and the matter that make this earth and that make this solar system and the sun and this galaxy. We're moving into, we call it like a 0 point, a neutral point, where we are pure energy. I like to say pure energy. Pure energy that is, we can call it as love. We can call it as forgiveness, acceptance, compassion. We can call it complete emergence with our sovereign, self-responsible power. With that is our authentic code. That power is our authentic code. And on this human experience, we resolve all of these shadow stuff that we think is controlling us. We resolve all these shadow stuff that's pulling on us, that's distracting us, that's delaying us, that's destroying us. Okay, until we get into that authentic code of who we are within ourselves. We emerge that within this physical body. And that kind of power is a power of immense miracle. Call it miracle mind. Where when we have that miracle mind, we can manifest, we can alchemize, we can reinvent, revolutionize any sort of imbalance that's happening. Because like I said, everything is about, do we have gravity, we have levitation. Okay, we have to have both. We can't just be dense for eternity on planet Earth, because that's what's going to happen. There's no balance. The Earth can't stabilize itself just being dense all the time. So we have the pull. We have the grounding force, gravity pulling us down. But we also have levitation, elevation that pulling us up. So we talk about destructive energy, death, decay. So, we have to have that on planet Earth. People don't realize we have to have a destructive force. Because when we create, sometimes we create things that get out of date. And we have to eliminate those things. And elimination is like decomposition of a plant. A plant just can't keep, it going and going and going. It has to go through that decomposition, has to go through that death so that it can reinvent itself, so that I can have spiritual growth. Spiritual growth isn't just, create the agenda, manifest the agenda, victory over the agenda. No, it's about you have to decompose such things so that you can reinvent your creative power, so that you're always in a state of spiritual growth, which is death and rebirth, not just keep the same thing going for eternity. That's boring. We're not here to keep the same thing that we've been doing forever and ever going. No, we're here to deconstruct things so that we can take on new things, new forms, new ideas, new inventions. And that's what's happening on planet Earth. We reach a plate of the peak, and then we start to, deconstruct that throughout so many cultures, ideologies, empires, dynasties on planet Earth. There's been a point of great creative materialization, and then there's been a great sort of deconstruction of that for something else to reshape, for humankind to experience a spiritual growth, to experience the balance of the scales, which is, we are very dynamic. We're not just meant to be one thing our entire life or eternally on planet Earth. We're here to basically to revolve and to unfold in many, many ways. That's kind of who we truly are. That's the Holy Spirit. We're here to unfold in many ways. So when we talk about oneness consciousness, we talk about I have unfold, and I am unfolding in infinite ways. In order to unfold in infinite ways, you can't just keep the same thing going forever and ever. You have to embrace death, and you have to embrace birth. Okay? Death, destruction, and creation. Like with the Middle East, that patriarchal age is really ending in that culture. And there's a lot of resistance because it doesn't want it to end. It wants to keep it going. So what's happening is that Mother Earth is creating a shakeup, and the way that there's a lot of crises, a lot of destruction that's going on, in order for that patriarchal sort of lineages that is out of date. It's no longer a part of. It has to die basically for something else to be reinvented. So the destruction is a part of that deconstructing patriarchal lineage. And it's not this sort of attack that you could say that this destruction seems like we're all being attacked. It's more so that we, in order to move forward and spiritually grow, we have to put an end. And we have to let die this old way of thinking and this old way of being, because that old way of thinking and being will not help or support the new spiritual growth that's going to take place in that region. So, and that goes with everything right now. And right now this planet is experiencing what we call like immense sort of deconstruction, as the whole planet itself is entering into a spiritual growth, immense spiritual growth that's going to be a part of the new earth, or the new cycle, or the new age, or the new sort of the new wheel that we're about to enter into. And we call it elevation. We call it the rise of human consciousness. And a part of that spiritual growth is that we have to basically cut out all of the the weeds, all of the thinking habits, the living style that are part of an old sort of creative agenda on this planet. We have to cut that out in order for us to grow in a new way. So sometimes in order for us to grow in a new way, we can't carry the weight of the thinking and the living of the old sort of cycle. Sometimes we have to just have complete death of that in order for us to have the reinvention of ourselves and of humankind. So this is a major reinvention, not just a minor sort of turn of event. This is a major reinvention that's happening on this planet Earth, where humanity is about to enter into, we call a matriarchal cycle, which is about a higher incarnation for humankind. And We're hoping that we can make it, meaning we have extinct ourselves already several times on this planet, because we just couldn't really successfully transition into what we call, I like to call it like an intergalactic sort of status, where we start, going to space and then other, that kind of thing. In other times we didn't make it, we couldn't make it, we didn't have, I guess we weren't quick enough. Like we weren't quick enough at spiritually growing to actually be able to hold that new status. So we kind of collapsed in on ourselves. But in this particular time, we do have a huge amount of speed on this planet that we didn't necessarily have at other times. It's a lot quicker this time than it was in those other times when we were trying to, as a humankind, to spiritually grow fast enough to make that new status and to hold it, that new status. So the speed on this planet, we call everything is being speeded up. All the shadows and all the unresolved shadows, okay, that the patterning, the habits, any way we've taken our power and we've given it to something else, okay, all of that is quickly is being brought to our attention so that we can basically take back our power, let that thing decompose, give a little prayer, give a little forgiveness, and allow ourselves to spiritually grow in that new direction that's set up for us. So a lot of people are not going to welcome that new spiritual direction, but a lot of people are, because what's happening is the planet has to go in this new direction that it's set up for itself. Okay, and humanity may not be too comfortable, but the planet Earth, it's like we don't have a choice. Okay, we have to go with what the planet has designed for itself, because the planet is about equilibrium. We have to go with the planet, or the planet can't equalize itself, and therefore, the planet, it will be imbalanced. And right now the planet is imbalanced in the way that, global warming and these things are coming up, and it might get even hotter, and the environment might even get a little bit harsher, because humanity, planet Earth has already jumped into the Aquarian Age. It's already there. But we as humanity, we have to get back our power to spiritually grow in that new way that's been set up for us. We're still spiritually growing in the way of like the old sort of cycle, known as like the Mayan calendar sort of, when I think of the old cycle. We're still spiritually growing in that sort of cycle. But Mother Gaia is already in the new cycle. And there are many humans that are there, but there are many humans who are not there. So we need more humans in that other, we can say that where Mother Gaia is, okay? Because part of Mother Gaia equalizing is that human experiences very dense realities, but human has to experience very elevated realities, because that's what balances out the scales on planet Earth. We cannot just experience just, this one way of pattern or lifestyle or ideology. We have to embrace other waves of spiritual growth in order for us as humankind to be balanced, and that's what's happening on this planet. So I just wanted to talk about this sort of negative influences so we could really get real with it, instead of, this boogeyman is trying to attack me, to really get real with, we have manifestation, we have alchemy potential to basically revolutionize whatever that thing is, okay, to take back the power to resolve it, into move ourselves deeper into our self-responsibility and sovereignty that is our Holy Spirit within us, where we're not, we are the miracle to all of these sort of realities that are presented in front of us. We are the miracle, and that Holy Spirit, that divine will, the divine will is our ability to make it so in all realities on planet Earth.